Yeah, my name's Murray. I just wanted to talk to everyone a bit today about Cucumber, the BDD tool, and how people normally go about using it, and why people seem to hate it because of that. I've been using Cucumber for quite a while, and when I first started using it, everyone was using it because it was amazing. And there weren't too many other tools around, but now it seems to have fallen out of favour with a lot of people, and there are quite a lot of alternatives these days, but I just wanted to go over why I like using it and how you might be able to use it better, or how I found I used it better. So let's start. So BDD. So for all of you that don't know what BDD is, or that don't do BDD, who does BDD? Show of hands regularly. Awesome. Who has no clue what BDD is? Awesome. All right. So it's quite simple. You generally have a failing acceptance test. So your customer or your client or your business analyst or someone will give you a card or a story, and it will say something silly like users can log in. And then what you do is you change that to have a role. So given I'm a visitor, then I can view the homepage. It's perfectly acceptable. And then what we do is we write a test to make that fail. So we write a test that simulates a user logging in. We make it go red, and then we leave it for a little while. And then along the way, we start writing unit tests. We make them fail on purpose. They go green. We dance a bit. And at the very end, if you've done it correctly, your acceptance test will magically go green. Or if you're like me, you fiddle with it a little bit, and then it goes green, which is perfectly acceptable as well. So if you're using BDD, there's quite a lot of tools out there today, as well as Cucumber. These are some reasons you shouldn't use Cucumber. Cucumber does come with another DSL, which, especially if you're new, and for example, if it's the first Rails app you ever worked on, or if it's the first time you're doing BDD, it is more learning to take in. So there's not just things like Capybara and RSpec already, but you're adding yet another DSL on top of that, so there's a bit of overhead. And some people these days, Capybara RSpec is really quite good, and I use it on many projects without Cucumber, so that's also acceptable. One of the reasons why you should use it, I've heard this one before, but I don't get it 100%. People tell me there's no one to read or write their steps. So like there's no dedicated business person that's writing their steps, they're writing themselves. But the thing is, generally, most projects I've worked on, or all the projects at least, have some form of stories. So generally, if you're doing agile development processes, you will have some sort of cards which will fit in for that. So someone will throw up a card that says login, sign up, things like that, and they're perfectly acceptable. And the number one complaint I seem to hear is Cucumber steps have to be written differently. So we started getting our business guys to write them, and there was a whole lot of overhead, and they couldn't be bothered, and so we just stopped doing it. And that's the one that shouldn't be a problem. So you shouldn't have to have someone learn the DSL of Cucumber to use Cucumber, and I'll go on a bit about how that works later on. Why you should use it, because BDD is awesome, it does BDD. If you're doing it correctly, the goal is to make that acceptance test pass with the minimum amount of effort. Generally your implementations will look a little bit leaner. Stakeholders, if you do it correctly, can read and write them, and you might get some accidental integration testing out of it. I've seen Cucumber used for integration testing, which you shouldn't do, because it's not an integration testing tool, it's a BDD tool. But if you're doing it correctly, you will get some integration testing just sort of rolling out, which is nice. So here's how you pop it in, really simple. You add the Cucumber Rails gem if you're using Rails. If you're not using Rails, you get the plain old stuff. You bundle, and then you've got this cool little generator. So if you run Cucumber install, it'll spit out a features directory within your project and a whole bunch of files. Prepare your database, and then you can start it with Cucumber. Very simple. So the problem was though, because a lot of people would use Cucumber for the very first time. So you'd start out, and it might be your first app, and first Rails app, and you've got this whole new thing to learn. So the guys that made Cucumber Rails, the Cucumber Rails gem, added this thing in called web steps, which is pretty cool. So what I did, it actually came with a whole bunch of pre-built steps. At the very top of the file, it said something like, do not use these. And then everyone started using them. And that was a little bit of a problem because it didn't promote you to use the tool correctly. And I'll go into, I've got some examples of what sort of happens when you do use the steps. So what they did was they removed it, and then this is when I figured out we shouldn't use web steps. So I was one of the people that ignored that little warning and thought, oh, this is fine, they look sort of readable and acceptable, and you know, it's just a stepping stone, and I've written my own steps and I'm awesome. Generally, it encouraged poor design of your tests. And so they yanked it. So this is the pull request. It's long and wordy, you probably can't read it, that's fine. The main little section is we're all queuing it wrong. The problem starts with bad examples set by the web steps file. So I've got to remove it. And everyone removed it, which is great, and now you don't have it, which is a good thing. So this is what you could have written before, and what a lot of people will still write for their Cucumber features. So you write them in an imperative style, and what I mean by that is imperative, you describe what happens. So generally when you get a feature card, it doesn't say what happens. So if a stakeholder gives me a card that describes the user being able to log in, I've never ever gotten from a stakeholder a card that said, I fill in my username and I fill in my password and it should have a remember me box. And I press the submit button. That has never happened in my development career. If it does, then maybe writing a new style might be acceptable. But for me, at least it's never happened. So this is what you would write with the web steps, and this is what I see a lot of still. This is a very, very basic feature describing authentication. So we're going to describe just a user logging in. So if you want to log in, we need to firstly create a user. So we're setting the email address and the password, very simple. And very simple steps. So you specify where we're at, we're filling the email, we're filling the password, we press sign in. We should see we'll sign in. Excellent. Thank you, it works. The problem is, I would never ever see that, like I said, from a business person. I've never seen someone write me a card with this on it. I've never seen this in like a feature tracker. I've never seen a client put this into Pivotal, so it just doesn't work. And the problem is you need to know some of the implementation details, or at least a lot of them, before you start actually coding. So if you look back here, we need to know exactly what fields are on the page and the buttons and so on. And you just don't really need to know that at that sort of step. So yeah, but I would suggest if you're going to write your cucumbers like this, this is another DSL you're learning. I'm a developer, and if you're looking at reading this, it's no easier reading this than Ruby code. So you can just easily use Capital and RSpec. So that's why we're there. So I'm sure we can do better than that. That's quite long, and that's a simple login. So once you start getting more elements in the page, it's going to start growing. So surely we can do a bit better. We can simplify that. So this is what you might do. This fits on one page, which is great. The main sort of things to take away is we're not setting up our user here, and I'm not sort of explicitly saying my user details. If you looked at before, I set the email address and the password, and you really just don't need to know those details. Also, the details in the form aren't really necessary in this high level, so I just simplified and said when I fill in my user details on the sign page. And very simply, it might look something like this. You have a valid account is simply creating a user. We keep track of variables through steps just by using instance variables. So the current email, password, and user are all written out like that explicitly, so we can reuse those in different steps. Please don't do this as well. I've seen this a few times, but this is what you might do. We've already got those 2 other steps that we defined earlier, so rather than writing some new ones, we can reuse them. you used to be able to write when or then for at the very start, but that's been deprecated, so now you'll be writing something like step. But I'll go on a bit later on how this is avoidable. You can actually write this a lot neater. So the problem with the imperative style in general is it's easy to read, but it still doesn't match what I'm getting on a story card. So it would be really nice to be able to track one-to-one the story cards that I get to the features that I'm writing my Cucumber, especially if I'm trying to do it in a BDD kind of style. So what you want to do is you want to do declarative steps. So the simplest way of describing this is rather than describing the steps you'll take to achieve the goal, you describe the goal that you want to accomplish and any conditions along the way. So example here is, given you have an account, you should be able to log in. Generally what happens is your features will not be longer than a few lines. It's perfectly acceptable to have conditions on here. So for example, you'll have, given I have a user account and I have the admin role, then I should be able to see the super secret section. Every single extra conditional requirement for that step will be an extra line, but with this sort of style of features, they generally don't get much longer than what would fit on a physical story card anyway, which is only a couple lines. So yeah, this is it. It's much simpler. Given I have a valid account, then I should be able to log in. And the great thing about this is you can get your business guy, you can get your client to give you something similar to this. It doesn't necessarily need to be 100%. You know, you can use, you can transfer it. But if someone gives you a card that says, I should be able to log in as a user, you can perfectly translate it to this. So you can track every single feature using a Cucumber feature, which is pretty cool. And then you can implement the steps like this. So we're setting the URL. I'm calling a method there called filling my details, which is on the next slide. I'll show you that in a second. I'm clicking a button and checking the page for some content. This is all Capybara. It's very simple if you're using Capybara RSpec. You're probably used to this already. The only problem then is the organization gets a little bit strange. So there's a defined place to put your step definitions. The problem is other methods like fill in my details they can't necessarily go in those step definition files, so you need to put them somewhere else. And it's really simple. If you're using RSpec, you would have seen use the support folder. Same sort of thing, we can use the support folder to help us. We pop an authentication helper. So very simple email. We're carrying across these instance variables. And then we're making that world method we're calling there. Just makes that authentication helper available to the to Cucumber. This is quite useful when your project's quite small. It's quite easy to have one-off methods like this, but once you get a bit more complex, you probably will need some more organization in this. Yeah, so declarative is better, I think. I have had some conversations where people still believe imperative style is better, and that's fair enough. But for me personally, I find it's much more of a useful tool if you're using this style of Cucumber features. Some reasons why. Oh, one really cool thing, the last one. So generally, a cool way to treat it is your feature files are what are given to you by a business person or by a client. And your implementations might change over time, so you're changing your web steps or the implementation of your web steps, all those helper files, but unless a client tells you to change a story, you don't have to modify your feature files, which is pretty cool. So, for example, if a feature gets deleted, it's quite easy, you just remove it from the features file, but it's kind of nice having a one-to-one mapping between the features that you're putting into your application and what the client's giving you or a stakeholder. In previous projects, I've actually had, for every single feature we would complete, we would list what Cucumber feature was associated with that one to prove that to the stakeholder that was done, which is pretty cool because we have one-to-one mapping. So yeah, these slides are online at that URL, and those examples as well are in a Rails app, and you can run them and play around with them, and that's there.